Welcome to Universally Judged with Sierra Burchell. On the Universally Judged podcast, we share the stories that you haven't heard from pageant title holders, models, content creators, and actors. In each interview, our guests share a behind-the-scenes look at their life and the lessons they've learned along their journey. This podcast is created in collaboration with Dive Through, a mental wellness company that helps people dive through what they're going through.
Welcome back to the Universally Judged podcast. Today we have the inspiring, the beautiful inside and out, Valeria Lipovetsky. Valeria has 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. She has over 1.3 million followers on Instagram, and she is nearly at 1 million followers on TikTok. This girl is so incredible. She started her career as a model. Then she moved into nutrition, where she started to dabble in the YouTube space. She now has a brand called Leia. They sell sunglasses, they sell jewelry, and now they're working on apparel. Valeria is also a mother to 3 young boys. She is so funny, so real. I cannot wait for you guys to hear our conversation. Here we have Valeria Lipovetsky. Valeria, welcome to the Universally Judged podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on. I know your schedule is crazy. For those who don't know, Valeria is a YouTuber. She's on Instagram. She has her own brand called Leia, and she has 3 boys, Jakey, Benny, and Maxie. All so cute. So welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your crazy schedule.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited and I'm very honored to be on your show.
Woo, woo. I always tell people about you for a few reasons. First, because of all the people I've ever followed on Instagram, you're one of the only creators who has ever been on stories that doesn't use filters. You're real, you're genuine. So you are truly unfiltered, even on stories, which I think is amazing. So I always tell people, like, who do you love following? I'm like, have you heard of Valeria Lipovetsky?
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I mean, as a content creator, like those are the kind of things, the little subtleties that, you hope to have that kind of impact on people, just them feeling, that they're watching a real person. So it means a lot to me. Thank you.
Good. It does. It makes an impact. And it's something that you wouldn't think is a big deal, but it is a big deal. And so I've always tried to do that as well. Be genuine, be real, have people see the real me, even on the days that you don't feel like showing the real you. We actually met on a brand trip, March 2018. We didn't obviously know each other before that. I didn't know your content, but immediately I was like, I love this girl. She's hilarious. She's real. You were a couple months pregnant with Max, and you were like, I remember you talking about a story. You guys went to the Bahamas or something with Jake and Ben, and you were like, it was a disaster. And it was so funny. And I loved your realness. And I think that's something you bring to your content. Is that something that people often tell you? Like, I love how real you are. What do people usually say when they tell you how they resonate with your content?
First of all, thank you. You're so, so sweet. I actually do remember that trip. And it's funny because I tucked it so like deep in my conscious, so I won't remember this trip. So you just mentioned it to me. I was like, oh, right. I remember that trip. But honestly, I don't know. It's not really for me. Like, it's not a show. At the end of the day, when I decided to get into content creation and to really build a business out of it, for me, I didn't even for a second had the option to think about, okay, am I playing a persona or not? Because it's not sustainable, right? Like, yourself, being an adult in the real world, dealing with real problems, and outside of content creation, there's so much going on that I just knew that if I had to put a facade for other people, it's going to be a very short-lived career for me, because I'll burn out and I just won't be able to develop it into what I want it to be. So I think that, it's funny when you say, oh, do people mention that how real you are? I don't know anything else. So I guess, I don't know, there wasn't like a pivot in my content that all of a sudden I became real. I was just like, this is it, and take it or leave it. And I'm very grateful that it resonates with my audience and my community, and I was able to build something out of just being me. which is wonderful.
That is wonderful. And actually, speaking of the trip, it was an eye-opener for me, and maybe I guess for you, for a lot of reasons. Actually, I remember we both had Common Projects sneakers, which some people are like, what the hell is that? But I feel like if you have Common Projects, you enter this cult of like, you can never leave. So when I saw that you had those shoes, I was like, okay, I resonate with this girl. But when I was on that trip, I did have moments where I'm like, so is this what content creators do? Because there were a lot of people on the trip. There were maybe like 15 people ish. And a lot of them, it was very much about, it was a show, right? Like, you know, constantly taking photos, which is fine. But the people that I was seeing on the trip and then their social media, it was completely different. And I thought, wait, is this what it's like? Is this who, am I supposed to put on some kind of persona? So when I met you, I was just so grateful because from that point forward, a couple of years later now, I've always come back to that feeling of, okay, I just got to be myself, because someone like Valeria, she's always been herself, whereas some of these other people, like you said, it isn't sustainable. And I think we've seen that. And it's just a very interesting space, content creation, influencing. What has it been like for you? Because it's really evolved from, you were a model, then you were in nutrition. You got your nutrition, I don't know, is it a degree?
Yeah, holistic nutrition certificate, I don't know.
Which you then entered the YouTube space, just kind of sharing some of that. And then from there, it really exploded for you. So when you meet people, what do you say, I'm a content creator, or do you say I'm an influencer? You're also a business owner. I know you stepped out of the CEO role of Valeria Inc., but you have Leia. So I guess tell us a little bit more. I've followed you for years, so I know, but give an idea of like kind of who you are, what you do.
Kind of the timeline.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, I was in the modeling industry for over a decade. I started modeling when I was like 16, and that was a very scary but very eye-opening experience, because I left home at then and I started traveling the world, and I just learned a lot through doing, what it means to, you know, earn money, spend money, save money, which didn't happen much back then for me. And all these other things, you know, meeting different people, being in different environments. And it really did change my life forever. And it exposed me to places and things that I would have never been exposed to. So it was definitely an interesting part of my life that decade, but it was also, I was in that middle. Like, I wasn't this supermodel. I was making great money, but I wasn't like going to be the next like Kate Moss. So for me, I was always like, okay, this is comfortable. And I feel like, you know, as I get older, this feeling of comfortable is something that I started recognizing I have within me. It's like an alarm. It's like, you know, you're comfortable, like it's time to wake up. And that's something that happened to me with modeling, where, you know, I was already doing it like 8-9 years in it. I was still very young, and I could still have another 10 years in the industry, but I was just like, this is really not going anywhere. Like, I'm not going to be this huge thing. So I need to figure out, what am I going to do? And, you know, at that age, I mean, now more than ever, because of my audience, I see how I guess scary it is for young women to be in those like early 20s, to try to figure out, what am I? What is my career? What am I going to study? You know, where am I going to work? And it feels very heavy to carry. Fortunately, I was back then at an age where social media wasn't the main source of like exposure to people and professions and things like that. So I didn't have necessarily that pressure on me. So I really kind of rode with it. Like, I was like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going to be my profession, but I don't know, I like fashion. So I decided to go and do this fashion program where I don't know how I got accepted. I completely like bullshit my way into like the program. I remember the examiner was just such a sweet girl, and I just sweet talked her until she helped me like make this skirt. I've never touched a sewing machine in my life. So the first stage to like get accepted was to sew like a little skirt. And I was just like, what do you like? What movie do you like? Let's talk. And that really just showed me again that I'm a very much, you know, I have the tools to talk to people, to kind of figure it out, feel it out. I went to the fashion school, dropped out after like 4 months. It was not for me. And then I was like, hey, what's next? I went back to modeling a little bit. And that's when I met Gary, my husband. And I was living in New York at that point. And when everything went really fast with us, it was kind of like we just knew that this is it. So I moved back to Toronto, and I started again thinking about, okay, what interests me? I was still modeling, but I was very much like looking for the next thing. And for me, it was, as you get older, you start to understand a little bit more about your body and health and things like that. And nutrition was something that was really interesting to me. So I decided to go and study it. So I went for like a 2-year program, and I got my certificate. And again, just followed my okay, what interests me? What might be my thing? Again, not necessarily had these ideas about being a nutritionist ever in my life. Just kind of followed an arrow, and I got the certificate. I started seeing clients. I hated seeing clients. And I think that for me, again, I'm a person that I'm very in tune with myself, I guess, because I had so much time alone traveling. I had the opportunity to really, have a very close relationship with who I am. So when I do feel something, I listen to it and I know where it comes from, and nothing else can kind of, sabotage that. So I started seeing clients. I was like, this is not for me. What can I do? But I did love what I've noticed when I was seeing clients. I loved when I gave them the information, kind of the spark in them, and just like learning something new and something that I know will benefit their lives and may change their lives forever. So from that, I took, a little bit of another arrow that was like, hey, you have this information, you love sharing it with people. How can we do it on a bigger scale? And at that point, I already had Jake and Ben. And I was just kind of like messing around. I was still modeling a little bit. And then I started looking into, it was 2016. I was like, I'm going to start a blog. And 2016 was very late for a blog. Like no one was really reading blogs. Blogs was the thing in like maybe, I don't know, 08, maybe 2010. That's when those exploded. And I started a blog. It kind of had a little bit of traction within my community, but again, I felt like it was too edited. You can always go in and like fix something you wrote and like change the, so I just felt like I couldn't really put myself out there necessarily. And again, felt very comfortable. I was just like, this is very comfortable. This is not what's going to really, help me to get to the next level. And that's where I kind of landed on YouTube in 2016, late 2016. I was just kind of starting to get really interested in what people are doing. And I saw a lot of people were on Instagram, and I was kind of just like messing around with Instagram. And I remember I landed on this one page of an influencer that had a YouTube channel. I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I went to the YouTube channel. Me, like in 2016, I want you to understand how removed I was from what was happening. In 2016, I still thought that YouTube was for cat videos and for music. That's it.
And that's not that long ago. Like that's only a few years ago. Anyway,
yeah,
okay.
I was like, people go pop zits there and listen to music at the end. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it was completely like such a revelation to me once I went on this channel. And I was like, wow, she shares information like beauty, fashion, nutrition, all these things in such a like fun way, doing her thing. I was like, this is it. And what I've noticed is that I kind of started getting nervous looking at it, thinking about the prospect of starting my own YouTube channel. And I was like, hey, this nervousness is an indication that this is an area where I could grow, where I would be uncomfortable. So it will push me to learn more and try harder. To me, that was it. Like I knew that that's something I want to experiment with. I definitely didn't plan on it to be this like a business. I looked at it as this is a great experiment for myself, a journey to go through to not only push myself out of my comfort zone, but also to really deal with insecurities that I had as a young woman. If it's, the way I speak or my grammar or my language or my mannerisms, things like stupid things that, we kind of focus on when we're younger. So I just kind of looked at it and being like, everything is aligned for me. The fact that I didn't know how to edit, shoot, didn't have the equipment, all that stuff didn't matter, because what I've realized is that you can Google or YouTube everything. And that's actually how I learned. I used my iPhone and I learned how to edit through, YouTube videos. And that's how it started. And I think it's so important to mention also that it didn't just hit. When I started YouTube, like my first video didn't reach 1 million views. It was like maybe 200 views.
Right.
The next video was maybe 150.
Right. Up and down.
Up and down. And it started, my first video was a vlog because I just like trying to figure out how it works. And then I went into doing nutrition videos, which is the main reason why I wanted to do a channel, just to really bring that information out there. And it wasn't really catching. I was doing it for about maybe a few months. And that's enough for me to see, okay, this is not really working. And it's funny because it was Gary who kind of, I showed it to him. And he's like, oh, what are you doing there? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like on YouTube. Said, what kind of content do you do? Said, I do like nutrition videos and stuff. He's like, you should do makeup. And I was like, I don't do makeup. Like, I don't really wear makeup, because that was in the time, like late 2016, 17. It was like long before that also they were around. But like James Charles, to me, that was makeup on YouTube.
Yes,
right?
The more like very, I don't want to say over dramatic, but like a lot
Yeah.
of makeup. Not your everyday.
Exactly, like
look.
a makeup artist, right? It was these like really big looks, and that really scared me. But I said, you know what? Okay, I'll try, because obviously nutrition is not catching. I'll see what else I can do. And I started notice even people are like, hey, what is your skincare routine? What is your hair care routine? So I did this makeup tutorial. I put eyeshadow for 30 minutes. Like and the way I edited it as well, it was like, yeah. I was like,
blend, keep
I
blending.
know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And it was the saddest like video ever. But that's when I started to notice traction. And then I realized that I can, not only focus on nutrition, but actually start bringing all these other aspects and interests of mine into YouTube. And that's when things started moving for me.
Oh, Gary, Mr. Balenciaga.
I know, Mr. Balenciaga, who has all the answers.
Oh my gosh, he's so funny. Okay, so I want to give some context for Gary. So Gary is your husband, and he is Mr. Entrepreneur. He is the one, who obviously gave some, why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? And one thing I wanted to say too is when people go to your content now, they see that you have 1.5 million subscribers. You have 1.3 million followers on Instagram. And a lot of people, I think that happened overnight. They think, oh my gosh, she showed up. She has this team. I think, do you have 19 people on your team now, or maybe even more?
Well, we have more because we have a lot of people on the Leia side.
On the Leia side, your
but we're all like under Valeria Inc. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that people obviously, they just think that happens. But as you've just shared, it's a process. And Gary, being the entrepreneur businessman that he is, he saw some of that potential. And I think one thing as well I've noticed with some of your content is that people want to believe it happened overnight, or that someone gave you some kind of secret to this success. Or one thing I've seen you talk about is that Gary, he's 18 years older than you, and people want to judge that and say, okay, you only married him for his money or his business access. And I think any person who's in a healthy or whatever relationship, people always want to believe there's something about it. So when you talked about things happening fast for Gary and you, Brennan and I got married after 10 months of knowing each other, never living together, and people wanted to like bash that and like try to bring me down about that. So in terms of that, complete side note to like your business and stuff, how do you handle that? Like, how do you handle that pressure of like, not even pressure, but people judging you for something because it's like not what they would do or something? I don't know. Like, how do you kind of overcome that?
I mean, for me, it's not necessarily, I don't look at it at this point in my life. I don't look at it as judgment. When I was younger, it was definitely a much bigger issue for me because I got married at 21, right? So I obviously got it from every direction. But for me, what happened with Gary was just like, I had no doubts because I just felt something in me that told me this is my person. I didn't look at the age. I didn't look at his previous success. It was just something from me that said, this is the kind of man that I'll be able to go on a journey of a lifetime with, and someone who, will just like, will be there for me and will like put in the work. I've had previous relationships before where I was just like, they also were pretty successful and, younger than Gary, but I was like, this is a person that will drop off the earth in a second, the minute like something, and at the end of the day, that's really what marriage is, right? Like it's a partner that will be able to, first of all, would want to work together, not against each other, and someone who is just really aligned with your values and morals. And that's what it is. So for me, when I met Gary, I was like, this is my person. And but yeah, I was young and we got married, and the fact that he was like financially, independent, like successful, was a big thing. Like people really focused on that. Although I was making money since I was 16, like I was affording my apartments, my travel, my clothes. But no one asks, no one really cares about that. That's not a sexy thing to talk about. So I think that for me at this point in my life, I don't look at it as judgment. When I spoke about it on Instagram, about this whole thing when people are like, oh, she just married for the money, or this marriage is for this or for that. To me, it just shows me how they were conditioned to look at the world. And it's such a narrow-mindedness that actually makes me a little more sad for them than anything else. Because in reality, marriages that are like, first of all, money is not evil. And that's the other thing, right? Everyone is like, oh, money, she married for the money. Money is not evil. Like, money is a thing that we need. Is it going to make your life, like, are you going to be happier? No, but it's a good thing to have. Like, you need it. For me, it was more of the fact that they never look at how the money got there in the first place. So when I met Gary, I didn't saw dollar bills. What I saw was a man that was that came from nothing, that persevered, that learned so many lessons, that made so many mistakes, and still got up and did his thing, that just had like just a different view on the world, and the like all these amazing qualities that are required in order to make anything successful. So for me, when I got that these comments, I'm just like, yeah, what's wrong with being attracted and wanting a person in your life that you can learn from, that motivates you to be a better person, that is so educated, and so like there's so many beautiful things around it, but everyone's focusing necessarily on the outcome, where I look at it as like the journey. It's the journey that attracted me to Gary rather than the outcome. So for me, like all these different things, like all this talk about money is just such a I guess unconscious like belief, and hopefully slowly people will, as they get older and get married and things like that, they'll learn on their own. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to spend too much time on educating people about that.
No, absolutely. And I think almost always it comes from a place of them, maybe not being happy as well in whatever is going on in their life or their relationship. But I think one of the most beautiful things about you and Gary's relationship that we see anyways is that he believes so much in you. He believes in what you're offering, what you're doing. And I think that is so amazing to see. And perhaps sadly that not everyone has that. Not everyone has that partner who believes in them wholeheartedly and believes in what they're offering to the world. So I love that we're able to see that from Gary and him. I forget, what was it a while ago? He wanted to call your audience like the Val Gals or something.
He's always on something. He always just wants to make it a thing.
Yeah. It's hilarious. Like his like catchphrase of like, hey, like, welcome back. I don't know. It's hilarious. But anyway, your audience loves Gary. I love Gary. I think he's so great. What do you think he brought? Obviously, he, believed in you and what you were offering. What was it something that he brought, or like something that he guided you to be like, let's start this as a brand. Like, let's take Leia, your Hebrew name, and let's do something. When I know you came up with a smoothie ebook, and then soon after you had the sunglasses, now there's jewelry. You're also going to have sweatsuits soon. Was there kind of a moment that you knew you wanted it to be a brand as well? Was that some of Gary's guidance? Was that you? Was it together? When did that go from content to now like actual merchandise and like your brand?
Yeah. So Let me take you back a little bit. So when I started YouTube, I didn't concern him with it at all. Like he was not aware, that I was doing any of that on social media. He was very busy with building his own company, doing his own thing. And for me, at the end of the day, I was just kind of trying to figure out if this is something that I want to do. It was one day when we got a pretty like a good amount of money transferred into our account. And he comes home and he's like, hey, so we got this sum of money into our account, and I called the banker, I called all these people, no one knows where it's from. And I was like, oh yeah, that was a partnerships that I did. And he's like, excuse me, what did you do for that partnership? So I was like, well, I'm actually on YouTube and I do these videos and all that stuff. And, I collaborated with this probiotic company. And he's like, what? He's like, okay, show me what are you doing? So I took him on YouTube. I showed him what I was doing. He's like, who's editing the videos? I was like, me. Who's like writing the concept? I was like, me. Who is, you know what I mean? And for him, he looked at me. It's like, oh my God. So I think that it took that in order for him to be like, you are, first of all, like, this is your thing. Like, you can tell that, you are committed and you're devoted. And he saw that, he saw something. He saw that people are interested. So he's like, this is amazing. At that point, a few months went by. He's like, keep doing what you're doing. He wasn't part of it. And then, I started sharing with him. I had, because I was editing, I was shooting, I was also negotiating, I was closing deals, I was billing people. So at some point, having 2 kids at home as well, I was kind of losing my mind, and I was editing at night, usually when they would sleep.
Same.
And so he came to me, he's like, so why? I saw, he was already started following me, kind of seeing what I was doing. And he said, why are you only posting like once, whatever, every 2-3 weeks? And I said, honestly, because I just don't have the bandwidth. Like, I don't have time. He's like, what do you mostly do? And I said, editing, because that's my weakness. Like, I'm not good at it. And he said, you know what? Like, at that point, I was making already like a pretty consistent income. And he said, I think that first of all, he sat me down. He's like, do you want this? Like, do you want it to be a business? I said, 100% yes. I totally see it doing something. He said, okay, so he said, well, you are ready, like, you earned this money, you have this consistent income. Let's think about how we can reinvest it in order for you to grow. I said, okay. And that's when that question is like, where do you spend your time in? And I said, editing. He said, okay, what you make covers an editor, like, no problem. So I think that instead of taking, money home, let's you reinvest it into getting an editor. And that's how slowly it started becoming like a thing, right? So it started with the first editor that I got that really helped me with taking pictures and getting more partnerships because of it, because I could do more content at that point. And then the next thing, he was like, what do you do next? And I said, honestly, I'm negotiating deals. Like, talking to clients is very difficult. He said, okay, let's get someone there. And when we started building that little small team and he was guiding me, he said, I would love to be part of it. Are you okay if I'll like be part of, we're going to incorporate this. We'll do Valeria Inc. Can I be part of this company? I said, let me think about it. I said, yes.
Hang on, Gary.
I said, you know what? Yes, you can. At the end of the day, at first I was like, whoa, but this is my thing. But then I realized that my strength is content. My strength is creative. So I knew that I would greatly benefit from Gary's experience and just guidance. And I know that he has the best interest, in mind for me. So that's it. So my best interest. Yeah. Okay. English. So we started this cooperation and that's kind of how we kept growing. It was that question, what do you do now? And what do you do now? And what do you spend time? So anything other than creating content, we try to put people that's their strength to do all these other things. And, when we started building the audience and we had a little more structure happening, he knew, since the day we met, I always told him, like, I want to be a designer. I want to have a line. I want to have products. I want to do things. And, at that point, I kind of came to him and I said, listen, obviously we have the analytics. We see what people buy. We see how people interact with things. We do the creative. We have the audience. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's my eye that pushes, right? Like I choose the product. So I want to have more, I guess, like I want to have more power of decision of what I'm putting out there, how the person receives it, how he experiences it, and things like that. And that's when Leia started. And I have to say, Leia has been probably our biggest thing right now that we've been working on, because this is something that, you know, I haven't done e-commerce ever in my life. Gary didn't really come from that background. So we are really trying to figure it out on our own. Again, reinvesting, you know, our money and growing the company. And I am very proud to say that until this day, like we never put our personal money into this business. It was all reinvesting and, you know, kind of growing accordingly. So that's kind of how Leia was born. And now we're slowly starting to pick up just like the pace and putting a structure together. And so it's a whole other journey, girl.
It's a big learning experience.
It's a big learning
my
experience.
gosh. And it's so different because you do a lot of partnerships with brands. So you sharing, for example, your coffee cup, you've done stuff with, is it Lavazza?
Lavazza.
Oh, sorry. Lavazza. Okay.
Yeah.
Lavazza. So you've done a lot of partnerships where you're sharing brands that you love, that you use. And it's one thing to shoot content for a brand, send it to them, you share it. But to be doing all of that yourself, literally from the packaging, the tagging, how things fit, how things look, the customer service, there's so much. So I can't imagine that learning experience for you. I mean,
yeah.
Oh boy.
We're like at 10% of like where I want to be. Like 10%. We're not even close. So but I embrace the journey again. First of all, I believe that, you know, school costs money. It doesn't matter throughout your life, whatever it is that you're going to do, it's going to cost you. And that's where you learn. And I feel like I'm really embracing and enjoying these like really restless like nights and lots of delays and, you know, all whatever the world is going through. And just everything is a very interesting learning experience.
It's so funny because you're taking more control over your brand and putting out a brand, but yet you're also letting go of some of that control of being able to control like what's coming to you, samples, all of that. So it's like you're gaining control, but you're almost losing like even more control than ever. But to do all that, you said you've built this team, which is just so incredible, so inspiring. And I think, I mean, from my perspective of me creating content myself, but also like looking up to someone like you, it's just so great to see that you're doing so much for yourself, for your audience, but also in essence for your kids, for them to see that you are chasing your dreams. And I think there's nothing more powerful than having an example in our life of someone who's really doing things for them. And you've talked a lot about that too, of motherhood, and that you saw your mom chase her dreams and do things for herself. And that made you later in life want to do things for you, for yourself, accomplish your own goals. And sometimes people may judge like, well, why are you working so much? Or why are you doing all this stuff? You know, why not focus that attention on your kids? And one thing I think about when I either see that on, say, your social or on other people's social that I follow is nobody ever questions the man. Nobody would ever question Gary and how much time he's spending, but they're questioning you as the mother. Do you ever have moments where you're like, you know, this is the example I'm setting for my kids, this is amazing? Or do you ever have times where I know we all have mom guilt, like how do you overcome that? Like there's no balance. I don't even want to say balance. How do you overcome that? Like the business, kids, family, yourself, like what does that look like in your mind? I'm sure it changes every day.
Yeah. I feel like, first of all, I'm very lucky to have a partner that just doesn't believe in that stuff. Like he honestly, every time he sees me, and I 100% fall into this like society kind of standards of like, we haven't spent enough time with them, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, we need to do more, I didn't give them a bath tonight. He always like, stop. You can't be everything all the time, but also, do you see them acting out? Do you see them being like terrible people? Do you see them? I said, no. It's like, okay, so we have wonderful, like mannered, great, like loving kids. why do you think there's a problem? And I really had to like step back and be like, why am I creating these problems, right? So I think that the one thing that helped me a lot is, first of all, being very, very open with my children and just communicate with them a lot. I always ask them, like, do you feel you need more of me? Do you feel like we spend enough time with you today or this week? What would you like to do? We openly talk about business in the household, and it's a very common thing in our household, and the kids are very involved in it as well. And I think that to me is so powerful to see that, sometimes they'll come to me and be like, you know what, mommy, I would really like to spend some time with you alone. So for me, that kind of gave me the green light to show that what we're doing is, we're doing it well, like our kids can communicate their emotions, and they can come and ask for what they need, which is very important. And that kind of gave me the green light to go after what I want, as long as I have this communication with my kids. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what keeps me going. And also, I think that a lot of people grew up in household of parenting that was more of like, do as I say, rather than do as I do. And I feel like, for me and Gary, we really try to be the kind of parents of do as I do. I can't ask from my kids to be something they've never been exposed to, have never seen. So even if I, can continue and be like, you have to say please and thank you, I always need to make sure that I do everything that I tell them to do, because otherwise it means nothing. And that applies to my career, and just like setting a bar and setting, an example for not only, hey, look at me, I'm going for after, the things that I want in life, but also, look at our partnership with Gary, where he's lifting me up. We work together. There is no this like roles of, hey, you're the mom, you stay at home, and you're the dad and you go work. Like none of that stuff. That's not, in my opinion, like at the time when my kids are going to get married, that is not, we're not trying to recreate the 50s like model of like, a family. So I want them to know that, it's equality, and it's partnership, and it's hard work. And that's really kind of what we're trying to instill in them. So I'm looking at the bigger picture rather than, hey, did I read a book with them tonight? You know what I mean?
That's incredible. That is so important to hear. Honestly, for myself, I thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, like you said, it's that constant like society or things that we see on social of like moms who are doing all these amazing meals and all this stuff. And like, I don't necessarily not like cooking, but I always feel shamed of like, am I giving Lily enough of like certain meals because I don't prep and like cut them into cute shapes, which is all incredible, amazing, no shame to that. But there's other things I'm like, I feel like I take her out and expose her to these different things, which hopefully in the big picture is going to have more lasting effects of how she sees the world. So I thank you so much for sharing that, because I think as a mom and trying to, chase your own dreams, it's so important to hear that the example we set ourselves is probably the most important thing we do for our kids. And they can only really repeat what they see us do, hear us say. And so thank you so much for that. Now switching gears a little bit more to like beauty, body image, confidence, mental health. I remember a video that you shared. And actually, there's a girl who I've chatted with before, and I shared you with her, your account and your social. And she sent me a message one time. I was like, hey, did you know that Valeria had a nose job? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't know. But why does it matter? What's so, mysterious about this? And then it actually wasn't soon. It was soon after you shared a video on your YouTube about your story, about getting your nose done, and basically why is it such a big deal? You shared why you decided to get it done and all this other stuff. Why is it, do you think, that people have this fascination with, okay, now all of her success must be riding on the fact that she had a rhinoplasty?
Now it's not the money anymore. Now it's the nose.
Now it's not the money, it's not Gary, it's the nose job. What is it about that? Like, I just loved your transparency, because you were like, yeah, well, what's the big deal? Like, what the hell? So do you have any comments about that, or how that maybe has still resonated with like how you present yourself and like people putting these certain beauty standards on you?
Honestly, I mean, I'm sure I was very bothered by it before, but and you know what? I actually remember when I was before I posted that video. There's this amazing like forum for like people who get together and talk shit about other people, and it's very gossipy. And we used to follow that thread, and every day they would post something about my nose, and I was like, wow, I wasn't aware that when I recommend books, I'm being contradictory because I had a nose job. When I'm posting about makeup, I'm being fake because I had a nose job. When I'm talking about self-love, I'm being fake because I had a nose job. So for me, it was like, okay, there obviously people are hung up on this nose job. Let me talk about it. I I don't know, like I would never care to ask another person the motives behind them changing something in themselves because it doesn't affect my life whatsoever. I think that I don't know. I think that as I spoke about it in the video where it's funny because even looking back, the reason why I had a nose job, and I think that video was not necessarily mainly to talk about, oh, people are, talking about me and my nose job, but talking about how back then I was so hung up on the way I looked. And to me, I didn't had any other words to describe myself other than, oh, all my life I heard, oh, she's such a pretty girl. She's such a pretty girl. So for me, I was always like a pretty girl. And I started focusing on these really like not important details like my nose. And I went to my mom and she saw that I was so insecure and I made such a big deal out of it. And it really started like affecting my social life, the way I conduct myself. And she's like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not letting you go through this like journey of hating yourself until you're much older and then do a nose job. Like, you want to fix it, let's fix it. And I'm very grateful that I had a mother that, didn't just like know and was very like receptive to just my insecurity. So that was something that I wanted to share. But also I shared that, looking back, I don't know if I would have done this no job today. I'm happy with it, but it came from the wrong motives, right? So that was kind of the message I tried to talk about. Everything else is kind of like, I don't know.
No, and that's good to hear too, because I mean, I know you know a little bit about me and my story, but with my body, my body seemed to be this big question mark of like, she hasn't worked hard because she's curvy. Where then I like got pregnant. After pregnancy, I lost weight because I mean, a lot of things, breastfeeding, stress, you're always going. And so then now people will say things to me like, how can you be an advocate for body positivity when basically you're not plus sized? And I want to be like, I was never in the plus size category, nothing wrong with that. But people like to put us into these boxes, like you said, of like, oh, she's had this done, so she can't be about self-love, or, oh, she's, skinny, so she can't talk about loving her body or not liking certain things. And I've posted things before where, maybe I have like a side roll or something, and people will be like, how can you even post this? Like this, you aren't even XYZ. And I'm like, it isn't about that. Just because you look a certain way, have a certain body type, doesn't mean you might have internal battles. People calling you the pretty girl. Maybe you didn't feel pretty at all. Like I'm sure, you still felt confident and stuff, but it's just so interesting that people like, they have this thing of, okay, well, you look this way, you feel this, like it's ridiculous.
It's easier in general. Like, for us humans in general, we need to make things like sense, like they need to make sense right away. So the easiest route to go is to attach a label or a reason or whatever it is that will put our mind at ease, to just be like, okay, that's because of this and that's because of that. And you know what I mean? It's easier. And I just think that now it's a very interesting time we live in, because I think, and especially due to COVID, a lot of people started questioning a lot of their thoughts, a lot of their beliefs, a lot of their, unconscious kind of just assumptions about people and themselves. So it's been a very enlightening time, and hopefully, people will get more enlightened and grow. But all that stuff, like, I don't know, it's so funny because these questions would have sent me to like such a a whole other spiel like maybe 2 years ago. And today I can't even, I'm so unbothered.
I know. I feel like I'm slowly getting there as well, where it's just like, what's even the point? Like, here's me. This is who I am. If you've got a problem, like, whatever, I'll leave you on red. I have no time.
Yeah,
No time.
it's really interesting. And you know what? At the end of the day, when I always remind myself that we're always mirrors, and the people that we meet are mirrors to ourselves. And every time, just, if I have a negative thought or have something going on in me when I meet a certain person or I'm in a certain situation, this is a lesson for me to be like, hey, I need to figure what's going on here. As that person, I know nothing about them. I don't know their story, you know what I mean? This feeling it's not because of them, it's because of me. So I feel like, I was talking about it the other day, responsibility. When I started taking that responsibility on myself and not say, oh, this person makes me feel bad, and putting that responsibility on that person, when I started being like, it's my responsibility to make myself feel good. So why am I not feeling good? So I think that completely changed the way I just approach the situations of just like unkind people online, unkind people in real life, and just like unkind situation that happens to us all the time.
Yeah, I saw something the other day. It was something like, am I intimidating or are you intimidated? Basically giving the message of like, we project onto other people how we feel about ourselves. So like you said, if someone makes you feel bad, it's like, are they making me feel bad, or am I allowing myself to feel bad? And it's just that feeling of being so sure of yourself or what you want, or realizing that, okay, I think these things are making me feel a certain way, but actually I'm unfulfilled in a certain way. I mean, myself lately, I haven't been working out as much. I haven't been taking as much time for myself. And I've felt more like on edge. And I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Oh yeah, I haven't taken those times to just ground myself and get, back in my own head in a good way. And I think it's always being that self-aware and knowing that we can come back to who we are, what we want to project into the world. And ultimately that impacts everything we do, our relationships, how our kids see us, our relationships with our kids. I know you've talked a bit about being self-aware and you've talked about it in this conversation. That seems to be kind of like your pillar, like coming back to who you are, your why you do what you do, why you put out all these YouTube videos. It all seems to come back to that essence of you being aware of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. Do you feel like that's kind of the pillar of what you do, is being yourself and then providing value to others?
I think that self-awareness is probably my biggest message. I break it down to small little things like, taking responsibility and, doing all these other things for yourself. But at the end of the day, self-awareness is probably like the biggest thing for any person, because once you understand what's just going on inside of you, consciously or unconsciously, is just gives you again the power to heal, to fix, to change. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's that simple, right? I feel like we right now live in, I guess, at a time where the word happiness is just overused, and like there's already kind of there's no weight to it anymore, right? People just throw it out, just like be happy, just love yourself, just, all these things are great. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily being happy all the time. It's just being aware all the time and understanding, how to approach different situations inside yourself. So for me, the biggest, when I say I'm a self-love advocate, or when I post my, self-love videos or captions, self-love is really, at the end of the day, just to bring more attention to self-awareness, because that's where it starts and where it ends. And just kind of giving a little bit more direction for people.
That's really good, because I think too, like you probably get asked questions like this, like, how are you so confident? How do you love yourself? How do you find that? And I think it really is allowing yourself to go through the emotions, go through the feelings every single day. We can't be happy every single day. We can't be motivated every single day, creative every single day. So it's just being aware of what you might need. You might need more or less of something. And like you said, it always comes back to that self-awareness, which I think is so important. Is that something that you wish you would have known when you were younger, is just being more aware of yourself rather than what other people were projecting onto you?
I mean, I think it's natural for, for younger people to feel that way. I think that we need to go through a certain journey and meet certain people that will break us in order for us to learn certain lessons. I think that I had something in me, like I was in general, as a child, I was just an introvert. So I was very close within myself, and I was very kind of always with myself a lot. So being alone and lonely and traveling around the world wasn't such a big thing for me. I thrived, being alone. So I think that self-awareness kind of came to me a little bit more kind of, I guess, younger than most people. But I definitely think that we can't have that, you can't have that ability without the experience and, kind of the bad and good stuff that happened that leads you towards that, self-awareness and revelation and just learning more about yourself.
Yeah, we have to go through life. I mean, there's just no way that we can learn some of the things we learn or the values we have without going through the ups and downs. On a totally different note, I've seen a couple of videos of Gary at like some dog places, and then I saw a story where you had a dog lately. Is this are you guys?
No dog. I don't know why like it keeps appearing in our lives. I mean, I know why, but it's just so I know my limits. Like, I'm not going to have this like white fence, 3 kids and a dog scenario at this point in my life. Because I can't take care of him, of him, her, whatever it is. I can't.
Right.
So for now, it's just like these fleeting moments when we see someone else's dog.
And you're like, oh, so cute. But no. Maybe one day.
I want to, you know what, to me, it's another family member. And
it is.
I don't want to, I take our family members very seriously, and I don't want to raise a dog that feels neglected or like, you know what I mean, acts up. The same with my children. Right now I'm at capacity with my emotional, energy. I don't have any more to give.
Yeah, I know that's probably one of your most asked questions too, is if you're going to have more kids, and you probably are just like, please don't ask me that question anymore. If it happens, it happens. If not, great.
Yeah, I think that kids are a blessing. Kids is the most amazing thing. Like, my kids are literally just such a joy for us. And,
they are.
And they're, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, but again, too early.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, our dog Ted, he's a handful, and since Lily was born, for almost 2 years, I feel like he gives me the cold shoulder. And then finally the other day I took him for a run, and now he's like my best friend again. He's always by my side. So they feed off of you. It's
100%.
Yeah. So I stay strong to you, even if the kids are like, we're going to take care of it.
No, they don't even. My kids are not even interested at it at all. Like, they say, we're not going to take care of it. So there's just really no reason for us to keep having these dog discussions. And I told Gary, it's okay. He'll be okay.
Yeah, Gary will survive. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time. Please say hi to the kids and to Gary. Yeah, you guys are just such an amazing, inspiring family. I know that you guys are just being yourselves, but I really feel like it sets an example for so many of us to be like, wow, here are people who are doing things honestly in the unconventional way. Like, I think there are people doing what you're doing, but it's so cool to see that, because so many of us constantly come back to that, oh my gosh, I'm not doing things the way other people are doing it, so I'm doing it wrong. And so to see that people are at your guys' level of success, and I don't want to say the word happiness because we just said people throw it around, but it seems like you guys really, okay. You guys have like so many fun moments, and I love seeing that, and it really is inspiring to see that. So thank you for being yourself and putting yourselves out there. We love seeing it, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. You guys are amazing, and your message is so powerful. So I'm really honored to be part of this. Thank you.